The planet Earth hung silently below the Zincar warship, a fragile sphere suspended in the vastness of space. Its blue oceans and swirling clouds seemed almost peaceful from this distance, an illusion that would soon shatter under the weight of the Zincar invasion. The Argatak, a massive warship built for the sole purpose of conquest, glided effortlessly through the atmosphere, its engines humming with a soft, unnatural rhythm. Its hull gleamed with a kind of precision that only centuries of technological advancement could create. Commander Ilkar stood at the helm of the ship, the panoramic windows of the bridge offering a view of the planet's surface below. His green skin, marked with bioluminescent patterns that shifted and pulsed, reflected the glow of distant stars. His 4 black eyes were narrowed in concentration, scanning the Earth's surface as he silently observed his crew preparing for the inevitable. The Zincar warship was ready, its weapon systems primed and fully charged. The invasion was about to begin. Ilkar was a seasoned leader, a tactician who had overseen countless successful invasions. The Zincar Empire's strategy was clear: strike first, destroy everything in their path, and ensure total subjugation. There were no exceptions. Yet, there was something about Earth that intrigued him. A curiosity, buried deep under layers of pragmatic calculation. Commander Jairak, one of the younger soldiers aboard the ship, stepped forward, his voice tinged with excitement and nervousness. "I have been reviewing the human data, and it seems their history is filled with strange accounts of heroes, legends of individuals who, despite their primitive weapons and technology, somehow overcome impossible odds. It's almost laughable." Ilkar glanced at him, his eyes unreadable. He had heard of these heroes from the human data feed that had been intercepted during their preliminary scans of the planet. According to the records, Earthlings had tales of warriors who could withstand injuries, fight off entire armies, and lead their people to victory against overwhelming forces. Ilkar had dismissed the stories as nothing more than fanciful myths, a primitive species desperately clinging to hope in the face of inevitable defeat. "I am well aware of these so-called myths," Ilkar said coolly, his voice carrying a calm, commanding authority. "They are stories. No more, no less. This planet will fall like the others we have conquered. There will be no exceptions." Jock, eager to impress his commander, continued. "I mean, some of these heroes, they are said to possess abilities beyond normal humans. One of their legends even speaks of a man who could fight without tiring, using only a shield and a weapon of strange design. It's almost laughable." The other soldiers on the bridge snickered, their laughter echoing through the metallic walls of the ship. To them, the idea of human heroes was nothing more than a source of amusement. In the vastness of the galaxy, the Zincar were known as the ultimate warriors. Their technology, their combat training, it was all unmatched. How could a mere human, with nothing but a crude weapon and flimsy armor, stand against them? "Enough," Ilkar commanded, his voice cold and final. "We are here to conquer, not to indulge in foolish stories. The humans will be wiped out, and their myths will remain just that." Despite his words, something tugged at the back of his mind. A flicker of doubt, however small, settled within him. He couldn't shake the feeling that this invasion would be like no other. There was something about the humans that felt different. Still, he brushed it aside, focusing instead on the mission at hand. The soldiers turned their attention to the battlefield below as the Argatak descended through the Earth's atmosphere, its sleek silhouette cutting through the clouds. The ship's weapons system activated with a low hum, its targeting systems locking onto military installations below. The time had come to strike. The landing. The Zincar warship touched down with a resounding thud on the planet's surface. Its landing was flawless, the shock absorbers absorbing the full weight of the ship's massive frame without a tremor. The crew's excitement was palpable as they prepared for the first phase of the invasion. The ground beneath them seemed so fragile, so insignificant compared to the enormity of the Argatak. Ilkar, flanked by his top commanders, stepped off the ship and onto the planet's surface. His boots sank slightly into the soft soil, and he felt a brief moment of discomfort. Earth was not like the harsh, rocky worlds they had conquered before. It was alive, and that life would soon be extinguished. "Activate the scouts," Ilkar ordered, and a group of advanced drones launched from the ship, soaring into the sky to survey the area. The Zinkar forces had come prepared, their technology far surpassing that of Earth's military. In a matter of hours, the human resistance would be crushed under the weight of their firepower. Drak, still brimming with nervous energy, had not forgotten the heroes that the humans had spoken of. He had read the reports, heard the myths. A soldier who could not be defeated, a shield that could not be pierced, a man who stood between the Earth's future and the Zinkar's wrath. "Commander," Drak said cautiously, "do you really believe these myths are nothing more than stories? What if there is truth to them?" Ilkar turned slowly, his eyes locking on to Drak. "Are you questioning me, soldier?" Drak immediately bowed his head. "No, Commander, I am simply curious. We have encountered so many cultures, but the humans, they are different. They don't seem to fear us." Ilkar's expression softened, if only for a moment. "Curiosity is a useful trait, Drak, but it has no place in a battlefield. Our enemies are flesh and blood, nothing more. They will break, as all others have. The myths are nothing but a distraction." With a final, dismissive glance, Ilkar turned his attention back to the horizon. He could see movement in the distance, a line of human soldiers, standing firm against the oncoming Zinkar assault. They were poorly equipped, their weapons small and primitive compared to the Zinkars. Yet they were there, waiting, as if they had something to protect. "Prepare for battle," Ilkar ordered. "We will show them how myths crumble." The first clash. The Zinkar soldiers surged forward, their exosuits glistening in the sun, their weapons crackling with energy. The humans stood their ground, forming ranks in front of their makeshift fortifications. It was clear they were outclassed, their defenses weak against the onslaught they were about to face. Jack couldn't help but watch in awe as the humans lined up in tight formations. They were organized, disciplined in their own way. He noticed the strange mix of fear and resolve in their eyes. These were not soldiers like the Zinkar, not trained in the ways of warfare. But there was something else, something deep within their spirit, that drove them. And then it began. The first volley of energy blasts lit up the sky, cutting through the air with a crackling hiss. The Zinkar's weapons tore through the human lines, scattering the defenders. It was over before it began, or so it seemed. But as the smoke cleared, something unexpected happened. The humans did not retreat, they fought back. A single figure emerged from the smoke. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and clad in battered armor that appeared to have seen countless battles. He raised his shield, blocking an incoming energy blast with a metallic clang. It was a shield unlike anything the Zinkar had seen before. Rough, primitive, but somehow Drak blinked in disbelief. The human soldier did not fall. He did not flinch. With a battle cry, he charged forward, his sword flashing in the sunlight. He was fast. Too fast for a man with such crude weapons. "That's him," Drak muttered, his voice barely audible. "That's the hero." The human soldier's movements were calculated, strategic. He was no ordinary warrior. He fought with an intensity that defied reason, using every inch of his shield to block and counter every Zinkar strike. The other humans followed suit, emboldened by the sight of this man leading them. Ilkar watched with growing intrigue. This human, this Captain Carter, as the humans called him, was not like the others. He had the same characteristics that the Zinkar respected in their own warriors: a leader, a fighter, someone who embodied the spirit of defiance. "Prepare to engage him directly," Ilkar commanded, his voice steady. "We will see if these myths can survive against the true power of the Zinkar." The battle continues. The clash between Captain Carter and the Zinkar escalated into a brutal, close-quarter combat. Carter moved with the precision of a warrior born, his shield never faltering, his sword cutting through the air with surgical accuracy. Zinkar soldiers fell one after another, their advanced weaponry useless against the relentless onslaught. Jarek watched, captivated. He's not just a soldier, he's a symbol. Enough, Ilkar snapped, his patience running thin. We will crush him. All myths are destined to be destroyed. As Ilkar charged forward, he felt something stir deep within him, a rare sensation that he hadn't experienced in a long time. Fear. Fear of something unknown. The human's hero was no mere myth. He was a force of nature. The battle raged on, but something had shifted. The Zinkar had underestimated their enemy, and now the truth was becoming clear. This was not just an invasion, it was a war for something greater, something that the Zinkar had overlooked in their arrogance. The Zinkar forces stood at the edge of the battlefield, their armor glistening under the bright sun, while the human defenders, though vastly outgunned, held their ground with surprising resolve. The warships of the Zinkar had rained destruction from above, and their advanced weaponry had obliterated much of the landscape, turning entire cities into smoking craters. Yet, in the midst of the chaos, something peculiar began to emerge. For all the devastation they had wrought, the humans were not cowering, they were not fleeing in fear. Instead, they fought. They fought with a ferocity that seemed disproportionate to their capabilities. The Zinkar's superior technology and advanced tactics should have crushed them in moments, yet the humans fought as though the outcome of the battle was not decided by technology, but by something more. Commander Ilker stood at the forefront of the battlefield, observing through the reinforced glass of his command vehicle. His sharp black eyes narrowed as he watched human soldiers with crude weapons, simple rifles, makeshift shields, and rusted swords press forward, relentlessly attacking despite the overwhelming force arrayed against them. Their resistance is inexplicable, Ilkar muttered, his voice low and almost unreadable. He had watched countless planets fall under the boot of the Zinkar Empire, but nothing like this. Humans, with their primitive weapons and unimpressive technology, should have been utterly crushed by now. "Commander," Jakrak, his young subordinate, spoke from the console beside him. "I've been analyzing their communication feeds. It's strange. They're referring to a single soldier over and over again, a human called Captain Carter. They seem to rally around him." Ilkar's four eyes glinted with a mixture of disbelief and intrigue. "Another myth, no doubt. One man cannot lead an entire species to victory. That's nothing but human foolishness. If this Captain Carter exists, he is as fallible as the rest." Jock hesitated before speaking again. "I'm not so sure, Commander. His tactics are unconventional. We've never seen anything like it. His shield, it's as though it absorbs energy instead of being damaged by it." "Absurd," Ilker growled. "There is no technology that primitive humans can possess that would allow such an effect." Still, the thought gnawed at the edges of Ilker's mind. Something about this Captain Carter felt different, and the more he watched the humans fight, the more his skepticism began to crumble. The Zinkar were masters of strategy, but these humans had something that could not be measured by technology alone. A deeper, more primal drive. The hero's symbol. In the thick of the battle, Captain Carter led his troops with an almost supernatural calm. His shield was indeed a strange sight. An ancient, round piece of polished metal, battered and scorched from the countless blows it had absorbed, yet still standing firm. His sword, though not made of the rare alloys found in Zinkar weaponry, was sharp, precise, and deadly. Every time the Zinkar advanced, it was Carter who stood between them and the human forces, holding his ground with a determination that seemed to inspire his soldiers to fight harder. It was as if the very sight of him, his shield raised high, his sword cutting through the air, melted away any fear his troops might have had. A legend was born that day. As the battle stretched on, the Zinkar soldiers began to fall back, unable to break through the human defenses. The Zinkar commander, Ilkar, stood on a hill overlooking the battlefield, a cold, calculating look in his eyes. This battle was not going according to plan. The humans had fought fiercely in the past, but never like this. They were organized, they were disciplined, and they were led by one man, a man who seemed to embody the very spirit of defiance. Ilkar's mind raced. Could this human truly be the figure they spoke of in their myths? Was this Captain Carter the same warrior they had been hearing about in intercepted transmissions? The one who could not be defeated, whose shield could not be breached? Enough of this, Ilkar muttered, pacing back and forth on the ridge. We will crush them, all of them. But this human, this Captain Carter, he needs to be dealt with. Turning to his second-in-command, Tanar, Ilkar ordered, "Bring in the warhounds. We'll flush this hero out." Tanar, a tall Zinkar soldier with a predatory glint in his eye, nodded and signaled the troops. The warhounds, bioengineered beasts with reinforced armored plating and sharp claws, were unleashed into the fray. They howled as they charged toward the human lines, their massive forms cutting through the battlefield with terrifying speed. But even as the hounds advanced, Carter was already there, his shield raised to deflect the beasts' charges. The warhounds snarled as they lunged at him, but each time Carter seemed to anticipate their movements, sidestepping and using his shield to strike them away with brutal efficiency. Jackrack was watching this from the command center and could hardly believe his eyes. No, this is impossible. He's like a force of nature. Ilkar's expression was unreadable, but a flicker of doubt crossed his mind. This human was something else. He had proven to be far more capable than anything the Zinkar had encountered before. There was something intangible about him, something that set him apart from the other human soldiers. It was as if Carter represented something deeper, something more than just a soldier. The turning point. As the battle wore on, the tide seemed to shift ever so slightly in favor of the humans. They were fighting not just with weapons, but with an unshakable resolve. It was as if every human soldier knew that Captain Carter was not just a leader. They saw him as a symbol of hope, of strength, of defiance. And as long as he stood, they would keep fighting. Ilkar was beginning to realize that the humans had something he could not understand: belief. They did not fight because they were forced to, or because they thought they could win. They fought because they believed in something greater than themselves. They believed in their myth, in their hero. Ilkar glanced at Jurok, who stood silently beside him. "You were right," Ilkar admitted, his voice barely audible. "This Captain Carter is no myth. He's something more." Jurok looked up at the commander. "He's a symbol, Commander, and symbols can be more powerful than any weapon." Ilkar's thoughts swirled as he watched the battle unfold before him. There was something truly dangerous about human belief. Their will to fight was unyielding, and no matter how many soldiers the Zinkar sent in, the humans fought with a kind of fire that was impossible to extinguish. For the first time in his long career, Commander Ilkar felt something he had never felt before: uncertainty. The final stand. By the time night fell on the battlefield, the Zinkar forces had lost their initial advantage. The warhounds had been routed, the drones had been downed, and the human defenses, though battered, still stood firm. Captain Carter had become a beacon of resistance, his shield never wavering, his sword never faltering. With dawn on the horizon, Ilkar knew that he had no choice but to engage Captain Carter directly. He could not afford to let this myth persist any longer. If the human spirit was what gave them strength, then it was time to destroy that spirit. As the Zinkar forces rallied for one final push, Ilkar ordered his elite squadron to move in and eliminate the human hero. The battle was about to reach its breaking point. But as the squadron advanced, Captain Carter stood at the front lines, his shield raised high, his sword glowing faintly in the early light. He was ready. This would be their final stand. The battlefield was a grim tapestry of smoke and fire, the once vibrant landscape now scorched by the Zinkar's relentless assault. The sky above, once clear, was now thick with the haze of destruction. Yet, amidst the chaos, the humans remained unyielding. Commander Ilkar stood at the front lines of the Zinkar war machine, his piercing black eyes scanning the horizon for the one thing that had been haunting him since the first battle: Captain Carter. The myth had become reality, and Ilkar could no longer deny it. The human resistance had grown stronger, more coordinated, and more ferocious with every passing hour, and at the heart of it all stood one man, a symbol of defiance, of hope, and of something that the Zinkar had long forgotten in their pursuit of conquest. Ilkar's heart beat with an unfamiliar rhythm, a twinge of uncertainty. The humans had fought before, bravely, yes, but this was different. This was not just a battle for survival. This was a war of ideals. And as much as the Zinkar had mastered the art of war, they had never truly understood the strength that came from belief. Standing in his command center, Ilkar clenched his fists around the cool metal of his console. "Telar!" he called out to his second-in-command, who stood nearby watching the advancing human lines. "We need to end this now. If we do not eliminate Carter, we risk losing everything." Telar nodded, his expression grave. "Understood, Commander. The time for negotiation is over. We bring in the full force." Ilkar's 4 black eyes scanned the battlefield once more, and then he turned to Jarak, his young officer. "You were right. There is more to these humans than we initially thought. But myths can be destroyed. It's time to do what we do best." Jarak had observed the humanity of the situation with fascination. The belief in a hero was something the Zinkar had never quite understood. To them, only strength mattered: weapons, strategy, and power, all things they had in abundance. But this Captain Carter was not just a warrior, he was a catalyst, and the humans fought as if they believed in something greater than themselves, something beyond survival, beyond battle. "Commander," Drac hesitated, his voice low, "there's something strange in their movements. Carter, he's not just fighting, he's leading them. He's inspiring them. He's become their myth." Ilkar's face tightened with frustration. "And that's precisely why we must eliminate him, Jarak. Myths are dangerous, and no myth can stand against the might of the Zinkar." The order was given. The Zinkar war machines, massive war mechs, and heavy artillery platforms moved forward, their heavy steps shaking the earth beneath them. The Zinkar soldiers followed in their wake, a tide of unstoppable violence surging across the battlefield. The final assault. In the human camp, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Captain Carter stood at the forefront, his shield gleaming under the low-hanging sun. His face, smeared with dirt and blood, was unwavering. The world around him was chaos, but he was focused. He had seen so many fall today, so many friends, comrades, allies. Yet he knew that the fight could not end here. It was more than just the battle. It was the future of his people. "Hold the line," Carter shouted, his voice cutting through the din of battle. "We fight for our families, for our future. Stand firm, soldiers. This is our moment. This is our myth." The human soldiers rallied, their faces hardening with determination. Every soldier knew Carter's name by now. He was no longer just a man. He was their banner, their hope. In his presence they felt stronger. They felt invincible. Even the thought of the Zinkar war machines bearing down on them did not shake their resolve. And then in the distance they saw it. The massive Zinkar war mechs, beasts of metal and fire, emerged from the smoke, their towering forms silhouetted against the setting sun. Their weapons hummed with lethal energy, and their eyes gleamed with predatory intent. "We stand together," Carter shouted once more. "No matter what they send, we will hold. For Earth." The ground shook beneath the human defenders as the Zinkar advanced. The sheer size and power of the war mechs were terrifying. But Carter had fought against impossible odds before. He raised his shield, and with a battle cry he charged forward. His sword gleamed as he cut through the air, a streak of light against the darkness. The first war mech fired its cannons. A burst of energy blasted toward Carter, but he raised his shield just in time. The force of the blast staggered him, but he did not fall. Instead, he pressed forward, using his shield as a battering ram to smash through the mech's outer armor. The human soldiers followed, charging forward with weapons raised, refusing to allow the Zinkar to take their ground. The tide of battle had shifted, and though the Zinkar were technologically superior, they found themselves faced with something they had never fully understood: unity. Captain Carter's defiance was a symbol, an embodiment of everything the humans stood for. He fought not just with his strength, but with his spirit, and in doing so he infused his people with that same spirit. The Zinkar, unprepared for the ferocity of the human resistance, began to falter. Even as their war machines cut down humans, they could see the tide of their forces beginning to turn. The humans fought with a desperation that was almost impossible to stop. The Zinkar realized, too late, that they had underestimated the power of belief. Ilkar watched from the command center as Carter pressed forward. His tactical mind raced, trying to analyze the situation. This was no longer just about crushing the humans. It was a struggle for something deeper. The humans had tapped into a power he had not anticipated. A power that did not come from weapons or technology, but from within. The Zinkar had always relied on their overwhelming strength, their superiority in numbers, technology, and firepower. But they had forgotten one simple truth: the power of the human spirit. And now, Carter had become the embodiment of that spirit. He was not merely fighting for survival. He was fighting for the soul of his people. The last stand. As the Zinkar forces regrouped, Ilkar made his decision. It was time to confront Carter directly. The myth of the hero had to be destroyed before it took root among the humans any further. He would face Carter himself and end this delusion once and for all. Ilkar's personal mech, the Korath, was the pinnacle of Zinkar engineering, a towering war machine capable of decimating entire battalions. He climbed into the cockpit, his mind focused, his body steeled for what was to come. The mech's systems came online, and the Zinkar leader stepped onto the battlefield. The Zinkar soldiers parted to make way for him as he advanced, his mech's heavy footsteps echoing across the shattered earth. Carter saw him approach and stood tall, his shield raised. "You are the one who leads these people," Ilkar's voice boomed from the mech's loudspeaker. "You are the hero they all rally behind." "I am their hero," Carter said, his voice strong and unwavering. "But I am not the only one." The Zinkar war machine advanced, its massive arms swinging down to strike Carter. but Carter was ready. With a swift movement he dodged, using his shield to deflect the blow. He closed the distance, his sword cutting through the air. The clash of metal on metal reverberated through the battlefield as Carter engaged the Xinkar commander. For every strike the Korath mech landed, Carter parried with an uncanny precision. The battle raged on, and the Xinkar forces watched as their leader, the mighty Ilkar, struggled against the lone human. "You cannot defeat me," Ilkar roared, his mech's weapons firing wildly. But Carter was everywhere at once, deflecting, dodging, attacking. Each strike was a reminder to the Xinkar that their superior technology could not outmatch the human spirit. Captain Carter was not alone. The humans fought behind him, rallying around his example. They fought with every ounce of strength they had, not just to survive, but to preserve something more valuable than life itself. Their hope, their future, and their belief in something greater than themselves. The fall of the Xinkar. After a brutal exchange, Carter managed to reach the mech's weak spot. With a final, mighty strike, he pierced the Korath's armor. The mech staggered and fell to the ground in a heap of twisted metal and sparks. Ilkar's voice faltered, his mech now immobilized.